You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I'm here with a really special guest, Jesus Eddie Campa. We're going to call him Eddie for this because he goes by many names, which we're going to touch on. But Eddie is an internationally recognized expert on leadership, law enforcement, and security through the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training. He is a national and international certified instructor. Eddie is currently serving as an executive director on the Council on Law Enforcement Education and Training for the state of Oklahoma. He's also the director and was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. Wow, I love me some Texas, and is over 21 years of continuing law enforcement experience. Wow, I have not had anyone in law enforcement on the show, and I think this is like my 220th episode.
Wow, awesome. You know, I must have made a little bit of a mistake and sent you my older, outdated bio, because it's actually been now 27 years. And I just actually retired in December this past year from my law enforcement career. So yeah, there's been a little bit of a change in that bio.
Well, congratulations on your retirement, because I can tell by stalking your social media today to learn a little bit more about you. You are anything but retired.
Yeah, it's funny because I say retired and everyone's like, from what? From what? I'm like, yeah, we've got a lot of things going on. And I guess that's what keeps me young and motivated.
Well, one of the first things we always ask our guests to do is share a story of hope, because I really believe that our stories are so powerful. And when we share those journeys with others, it creates a beautiful ripple effect of hope in the world. So do you want to share your story of hope with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stories of hope, right? But I guess the one mission that I have right now, ever since retiring, is, you know, one of the reasons I started leading through adversity, and the book that I wrote has a lot to do with wanting to bring leadership back to leaders. I've noticed that a lot of leaders have gotten away from leading and have actually gotten more in tune to being popular and liked. I think that when you're in a leadership role, you know, the only thing that I can hope for is that you're in that leadership role because you're trying to do the right thing, because it's the right thing to do, not because you're trying to be popular or just trying to do what is the popular thing. So that's my biggest hope right now. And that's why, you know, we took a step back from our law enforcement career and decided to start mentoring and developing the future leaders of our nation.
And actually, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because we were just talking a little bit about it before we started recording the show. And I work with influencers, and I always ask them what their idea of influencer is. And they'll tell me having thousands and thousands of followers and having like this massive following them, and they lose sight of what leadership is. And I explain to them that if you have 1, 2, 3 followers, you are already an influencer, and you should take pride in that and use that and realize what it is you're influencing on. So how do you bring leadership back to leaders?
Right. And that's the $1 million question, is how do you do this? You know, right now we're going through a major shift in culture. We're going through a major shift in what society deems to be correct and right. I mean, right now everybody's more concerned with likes and followers than they are with doing the right thing. Right. And so one of the things that we do is we try to mentor, leaders. And what we've done is we've opened up our channels to basically be able to talk to people who are in leadership positions right now who need a sounding board. And a lot of the times, current leaders that are in those positions, for instance, you know, we had a CEO earlier today call us, and he had an idea and it's not flowing the way he wants it to go because his staff isn't behind it, even though it makes the most logical sense and it's in the best interest of the organization. It's just not in the best interest of certain people. So while we were talking and mentoring, we had to take a look back and step back and say, okay, look, what is your mission? What is your goal as the CEO? Well, I have to make the company grow. Right. So you just answered your own question in less than 5 minutes. So what's in the best interest of the organization? Well, I have to do this, but people aren't going to like it. Well, you know what, if you want to be like sir, I said, I'm sure I can get you a job at my local Baskin Robbins selling ice cream, because everybody likes that person there because they're selling ice cream. So he caught on, and it's just basically by mentoring and talking to them and walking them through. I mean, I know when I was the chief of police down in an East Texas town, I created a program called No Colors, No Labels that wasn't very popular internally, but was very popular external, and it helped bring the culture together. So you have to show by examples, and the only way to do that is by having a mentor or a sounding board of someone who's actually done it, you know. So I think that that's the most important thing, is trying to connect current leaders and future leaders with people who have actually done the right thing, because it's the right thing to do, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And I'm a firm believer in, like, sometimes it's not always a popular thing, but if you know it's the right thing, you have to do it. And once you do, first of all, you're opening doors for other people to do the right things. Because it's, whenever I know I'm in that uncomfortable zone and I'm scared to move forward and do something new, I know that I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And
Right.
it always works out magical. When you have that book, Unmasking Leadership, which, by the way, I want to definitely get into, but what does that mean, unmasking leadership? Like pulling out like what real leaders should look like?
No, well, yes and no. I mean, so the premise behind it is, one of the things that I noticed is that right now the nation and maybe the world is really in a pivotal time about when it comes to leadership. Right now, leadership is actually based on what the followers' perception of leadership is. And a lot of followers, what they're doing is they're saying, oh, you know, he's a good leader if he benefits me. Oh, he's a great leader if what he's doing benefits me, as opposed to saying, you know what, he's got great leadership abilities. I may not agree with him. I may not like what he's doing, but it's the bigger picture. It's the vision. It makes sense. So what Unmasking Leadership does is it talks about, when I first became a leader, for instance, you know, I was never told that I thought I was going to become Mr. Popularity because now I had influence, right? And in reality, because I do the right thing, I became one of the most disliked people because I was holding people accountable. And I couldn't understand. It's like, well, wait a minute. I'm doing everything everybody wanted me to do, hold people accountable, do this and do that, but they don't like it. It talks about how when you get to leadership positions, you're going to lose your friends, you know. But then it talks about how you're going to gain new friends who think that they can use you to benefit from you. It talks about how in leadership, it's okay to upset people at sometimes. You know, sometimes your decisions are going to upset people, and it's okay. You know, we're in a culture right now where everybody wants to be politically correct and walk that straight line and not upset anybody and just be liked. So Unmasking Leadership, what it does is it kind of talks to you about all the dark side that nobody told me about when I was moving up the ranks that I was going to have to deal with. Of course, there's one whole chapter devoted to, and I'm sure you know it, you're big on social media. So we all have these little thing called haters that love to follow us and just talk bad about us and say bad things. And how do you deal with it? You know, we talks about how to differentiate between listening to the noise and hearing the noise. While there's noise out there, you have to, you know, if you stop to listen to every barking dog, you're not going to get very far. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. If you stop and hear every barking dog, you're not going to get very far. But if you stop and listen to the important dog, you know, and differentiate what is important, then you're going to get further in life. So that's what Unmasking Leadership does. It basically talks about the things that nobody tells you about when you become a leader.
You know, you talk a lot about coaching, and people ask me all the time, and I've been asked this many times when I'm speaking on stage, who needs a coach? Everybody does. I did not get here all on my own. I literally used the advice and the leadership skills of others who've walked before me and absorbed that. So who would you say needs your leadership skills?
Well, you know, not necessarily mine. Of course, it's a great place to plug my company and say, I think everybody should follow me and listen to me, right? But I think you're right. Everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs a mentor, you know, and you got to differentiate between, a coach and a mentor. They're different. Your boss and a mentor is different. I think coaching is somebody that helps you get you there, but a mentor is somebody that develops you. So I prefer using the word mentor, because I know I had a mentor or I continue to have a mentor, and we're going on 23 years working together, and I just realized that he was my mentor 3 years ago. Uh, you know, I just didn't realize. I just considered him a great friend, somebody that I could turn to and stuff like that. But as I was writing the book, and I'm sitting there writing it, and I'm like, huh, wait a minute. I learned that from him. I did this from him. Like I got here from there. Holy smokes, this guy's my mentor. So when I got to that mentor chapter, I was just like, I just wrote a book about my mentor. So it was pretty awesome. So I think that everybody needs one, and you just got to find that right person that fits your ideals. Now, you never want to find a coach that's just going to hype you up and get you hyped up and just tell you that, jumping off the bridge is the greatest thing to do because that's what you want to do. So yay, go, go, go. You got to have somebody that's going to put on the brakes and say, well, okay, let's talk about why you want to jump off this bridge. So yeah, but I think everybody needs one. Everybody should have one in life. And I think for the most part, if you really stop and think about it, if you have a good relationship with your parents, most people already have a coach, and that's your parents, because that's, they're the ones who raise you and take you, to those next steps, right? I mean, I grew up with a single parent. My mom, she worked, 2-3 jobs in the garment factories. So I never really saw her. But as far as my work ethic, that's where I got it, because it was a learned behavior from her,
So I do think that our mentors start with our parents, even if sometimes it's not always great things that we're getting, it's still things that are helping us grow. And for those of you who are parents, you'll understand, like, there were days, my kids, I have 4 children. They're all adults now. I got 7 grandkids, but they will literally yell at me, like going to high school or something. I hate you. And I would say to them, yay, I'm doing my job. That means I'm showing up and doing my job if you don't always love me or like me. And now as adults and with children of their own, I hear this, Mom, I am so sorry. How did you ever let us survive to this point?
Right.
Right. And they get it. So we're all mentors, right? We're mentoring our siblings. We're mentoring our children, our nieces, our nephews. So we have to show up as the best version of ourselves every day. By the way, sometimes the best version of ourselves is falling flat on our face and showing them what it looks like to get back up.
Well, that's one of the most interesting part. Like, for instance, going back to the book, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to plug the book. It just reminds me is that one of the chapters in the books talks about failing. Failing is okay as long as you learn from it. I know when I wrote it and my oldest son read it, he's all like, "Dad, all you're talking about is all your failures and this and that." And then I said, I said, go back and read it again. So he came back and he's like, okay, never mind. I got the message. And I was like, right. Failure is the mother of all success. And there's one pet peeve I hate is when you have that one cocky guy, I've never failed at anything in my life. Well, then you must not be trying hard enough, brother, because you know what? You may have gotten this far, but could you imagine how further you would have gotten if you had failed? Because if you had failed and gotten up and just kept moving forward, victory tastes so much better when you've tasted defeat, and I can sit here and tell you that while, sometimes I get down on myself and in the dumps, and then I have my wife or my son or even my mentor, they start reading my bio and they're like, really? You're a failure? And like, what else do you have to prove, dude? And I'm like, okay, leave me alone. I just feel like having a pity party for a second. Give me that, So yeah, but failure is the best lesson to move forward.
I will tell you, as a mindset coach, if someone asked me, have you ever failed? I would say no. But I would also tell them, but I have had some very painful, heart-wrenching feedback from things I have done, but I never failed because I was doing something to get that feedback. And the only time you fail is when you stop trying. Like, that's
right.
Your failure.
Right. And that's true. And you gotta, it just depends on how you take it. I mean, I think you say it pretty well is, no, I don't fail, because I keep moving forward. So while you fail, you're still moving forward. So it's not really a failure. It's more of a regrouping, a redirect. But you know what? I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I have fallen flat on my face so many times And honestly, there was times where I just wanted to stay on the floor, flat on my face. But it's just something inside of me doesn't let me do that. I have too many people that I'm responsible for and accountable for, that I don't have that luxury. Not that it is a luxury, but I just got to keep up, get up and, give me 24 hours to lick my wounds and cry about it. And I'll get up and then it's over.
So long as you don't give up. We talk on the show all the time about babies learning to walk, and they fall and they fall and they fall, and their balance is off, or they, were getting up the correct way, and they compute all of that into their little minds. And the next thing you know, they walk. Can you imagine if we fell one time, hit ourselves really good in the head, and we're like, that hurt, I'm not doing it anymore?
Yeah, we'd all still be crawling.
Yes, but it was feedback, right? They didn't fail because they fell the first few times. They were learning. So I think that you should take all those failures or feedback, however you want to look at it, and start using that to empower you moving forward.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you 100%. You're right. The biggest failure is when you stop trying. A lot of stories about failure, but I never stopped trying, and I kept moving forward. But that's one thing that I'm not embarrassed to do, is because I've heard a lot of people say, well, what if I fail? Okay, well, what if you succeed? You're not gonna know until you try it, brother. And if you don't move forward and try it, then you did fail because you didn't try.
100%. I do want to talk a little bit about your book. I have not gotten it yet because I didn't know you had a book until today, but I will be getting it and reading it because I love reading. But tell us a little bit about Unmasking Leadership. Who's it for? What are some of the things they're going to take away from that?
Right. So Unmasking Leadership, and actually the book it comes out July 4th. So it hasn't really come out yet. It is on pre-order, and I'm really happy to say that, pre-order sales have gone way more than what I expected. I was just like, wow, that was really cool. So I'm really happy about that. But Unmasking Leadership is basically for just anybody that's either about to get into the game of leadership, or people who got into the game of leadership and are asking themselves, why is everything going wrong? In Unmasking Leadership, what it does is it prepares you for the unhidden truths that people never told you about when you get to leadership. For instance, when I first, became a chief of police in this one community, when I applied for the job, they told me how many sunshine and rainbows I was going to see during this leadership under my tenure. And when I got there, it was more like, walking into hell. They didn't tell me about the haters, and they didn't tell me about how many friends I was going to lose and how many friends I was going to gain who were there for false pretenses. They didn't tell me that it was okay to try and fail and make things wrong. They didn't tell me that every time I made a decision, I was going to upset someone. So it kind of prepares you. It talks about mentorship. It talks about learning how to fail, how to deal with your haters, how to differentiate between, listening and hearing. We always say, can you hear me? Well, yeah, I can hear you. I mean, you can scream louder and I'm still going to hear you. I'm just not listening to a damn thing you're saying, but so you got to differentiate between, because a lot of times people will always say, just ignore your haters, but sometimes your haters are your best critics, and sometimes they'll point something out. But if you stop there and listen to everybody, for instance, I'm a law enforcement expert, been in law enforcement 27 years, been in security business 20 years. I've been in leadership positions basically my entire life, but formal leadership positions, the last 16 years of my life have been leadership positions. I'm not going to take law enforcement advice on how to lead from a guy who just graduated from the police academy. However, I may take his criticism on actual field operations because he just got out of the academy. I haven't been in the academy since 1994. Yes, well, I'm up to date on certain things. He might have a fresh perspective on something that I haven't realized yet. So you got to listen. You got to figure out how to differentiate from hearing and listening. So the book just basically prepares those who have never been into a leadership role of what to expect other than sunshine and rainbows.
So I feel like how you deal with that negative feedback from people is huge, especially if you're on social media. Like if you're on social media, you're getting blasted to the world, right? If somebody isn't happy with something about you or what you've said or something you've done or a picture you posted, how would you recommend that people like deal with that? Like you have to hear and listen because there's always something in feedback that you're getting. And how would you deal with it? I know how I deal with it. I thank them. I never engage on social media in an argument because you will not win that fight. And I always send them a private DM and I say, thank you so much for that feedback. I'm not agreeing with them, right? And I'm not disagreeing with them, but I'm telling them I can always do better. And the only way for me to do better is to learn more about what, is being perceived about the things I say. And by the way, I've made more friends that way. Like they are now my loyal followers. They're giving me so much positive comment because one, I heard them. I didn't tear them down or defend myself. I didn't say they were right or wrong, but I thank them for giving me that information.
Right. Well, the one thing that I do is I never engage with them. You're a bigger person than I am because there's no way. Once I start typing on there, the last thing I'm going to do is thank them, right, for criticizing me. But I'll read it and I'll be like, okay. And this is where a lot of self-reflection comes to mind. At the end of the day or first thing in the morning, when you think about, X said this, is there any validity to it? Is this like, well, no, there isn't. Oh, okay. And I move on. And I noticed that the one thing that haters hate is for you to ignore them, and so they'll become a little more aggressive. And the more you ignore them, eventually they just get tired and go away, but the most important thing is actually that is it's just differentiating between listening and hearing. Is there any validity to what they're saying, and how can you make that adjustment? I know that I have succeeded a lot in life by actually taking their criticism and making the adjustments, and then all that does is upset them even more. And it starts funny because then they start criticizing the very first, for instance, one of the biggest thing is that I don't smile. Why you always look like you're mad? You never smile. You never smile. Well, now in a lot of my pictures and stuff, you'll see me, all I do is smile. And now it's like I'll get from people, why are you smiling? What do you think, it's funny? And I'm like, dude, you're the same person that told me that I didn't smile. So it's like, make up your mind, like which one do you want? And that's when I realized that there's just no validity to what they're saying. They just don't like me. And in life, you're gonna run into people that just don't like you no matter what you do. So they already don't like you, they're already going to talk about you, so why not just keep moving forward doing your own thing and you be happy? Because it's not really the fact that they don't like you, your haters. It's that they want to be you and they just can't. They don't know how to be you.
I think you nailed it. Like you really did nail it. One of the other things I want to talk about is you have a podcast, and I love podcasts because it's a way for me to fill my brain in craziness, right? So I'm listening to them in cars and I'm learning. Yours is I'm Leading Through Adversity, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the podcast and what people will learn from that.
Yeah. So, one of the things is that, leading through adversity, leaders, that's what leaders are for, right? They're there to deal with crisis. And that's when true leadership comes out. Leadership isn't there when it's all sunshine and rainbows and everything's going great. I mean, anybody can lead in that. But leadership, it's basically about leadership in crisis. How did you lead through a situation that you were going through? How did you adjust? How did you handle it? How did you maneuver through it? One of the biggest issues is, right now in law enforcement, the average shelf life for a police chief is 1 to 2 years. So how are police? I mean, in the police chief world, we have a joke. You get hired to get fired, to get hired to get fired. It's the only job that that your tenure is going to last anywhere between 1 to 2 years now. So it's like, how do you get fired from leading this police agency and then get hired to lead the next police agency? And how do you move forward when you have that shadow of, well, he got fired because of vote of no confidence or this or that? And how do you continue to move forward? Or right now, talking about leadership, during COVID, I mean, how did you succeed through COVID? I mean, every business owner, every entrepreneur is a leader. They're leading their organization. And how did they get through? How did they get by? So it helps talk about marketing and development and mindset and how to move forward. And we've been really successful. Lucky that we've had a couple of shows where we got some feedback from somebody saying, hey, had I not heard your show when you had this guest on and what he said, I went and I implemented it and it saved my business. And it's like, yes, nailed it. So it's just about leaders helping leaders lead through adversity and how to continue to get by.
That's true leadership. Now I want to talk to you about your retirement. So what does that look for? Because I know you were anything but retired. You're just moved into a new direction.
Well, it's actually my second retirement, which is kind of funny now that I'm thinking about it as you're mentioning it. I started my law enforcement career in 1994 with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, and I retired in 2014. After 20 years, I retired as the chief deputy. But I retired from that agency because I was moving on to a different agency as the chief. So I moved on to Ector County as the chief of police. Then I left that, went to East Texas Community. I was the chief of police there for 3.5 years. I didn't want to renew my contract, so I came back home, started working on my PhD, opened up my businesses, and I said, okay, I'm done. And then Oklahoma called and said, hey, would you be interested in this? So then I went to work there for 2.5 years. And honestly, the only reason I left and retired was my family stayed in El Paso and I was in Oklahoma. And if you've ever tried to drive through Texas, it's like driving cross country in one state. So my drive from El Paso to Oklahoma was a 10.5 hour drive. And I was making that trip. So I was making a 22-hour drive every other weekend to come visit my wife and kids. 1,400 miles round trip. It just got to be too much, And so I just finally said, you know what, after 27 years, I think it's time to just come home, wrap up the career. It's been a great career and continue to work on the leading through adversity in our security company. So I came home December 20th and wrapping up my PhD here in March, just completed the book. It's ready to come out. We run the 2 companies. And yeah, the retirement life is great. I've had a lot of time to relax. Said no one ever.
Well, I have loved talking to you. You guys, everyone can go grab Unmasking Leadership. It releases July 4th, but I believe this comes out right after that. So it's out. Go get it. And also grab, check out the podcast, Leading Through Adversity. And where else can they connect with you to learn more?
So, you can check us out on Facebook, our website, jesuseddiecampa.com. There you'll see a little bit more about who I am and what I am, and, a lot of videos and a lot of the podcasts that we've been on. And then you can go to our Leading Through Adversity. If you're looking for a coach or a mentor, you can find out how you can connect with us. Right now we have 6 people on our staff, all former, 2 former chiefs of police, myself and my other partner. And we got a former superintendent, a current superintendent, and a couple of CEOs, entrepreneurs. And you can see what our services are and learn there. Or you can just follow us on social media just for the heck of it, which is Jesus Eddie Campa at everysocialmedia.com, at every social media.
We're going to put all of those links in the show notes. You guys can connect really easily with him and get the book and check out the podcast. Thank you so much for being with us today, Eddie.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.